Motion.
Yeah. Really?
Israel.
Really?
Meir.
No, he's here. He just didn't in the class yet. He was in the other classes.
Avichai.
What'd you got? Who?
Avichai.
Just got in.
Just went to go check.
Ezra.
Dropped out of school. Every week the same thing, and every week I'm still gonna be sad about it.
Meir.
Basically, the man is not here.
Meir Margarit.
Yeah, he's coming back now.
Eitan.
There's also a thing about Humphreys where
Chaim.
and everyone's always surprised with that. You always have someone who says, wow, really?
Binyamin. Yitzchak.
There's always one new person who realizes.
Tzvi.
I'm sure, yeah, but it's
Yeshua.
Yeah.
Dude,
Noah.
Freaking hair, bro.
in my shirt.
Michael.
Yeah.
Aryeh.
But no, he's right though. There's always at least one.
Aryeh.
Yeah.
Because it turns into
Is it Aryeh?
So that's how it works.
Right behind me.
Shlomo.
He's here. He's here somewhere. He did come to school today.
Yeah, he's upstairs.
Lovely, he voted Tuesday, but came in regular time anyway.
Shmuel.
Yeah, here.
Yaakov.
No, yeah, it's an original song. It's a real song. They sing it at Riku Dori. Did you not know? Super Trump. Super Trump?
They sang it at Riku Galim.
Yeah.
No way. They sang it by Ganzaker or like Yerushalayim.
Have you not?
No, I'm saying it in the old city.
So good.
Yeah. So they sing it in the old city or like Ganzaker or something.
How's it go?
No, the rally is right Yerushalayim, so they like.
Yeah? What's it like right now?
It's not Ganzaker, right in front of the big show.
Before the cucumber broccoli cauliflower pita, you did Italy. You
Next
went to
No, not Ganzaker.
you went
Yeah, that.
Taking it on a shopping list.
Yeah, that's right.
Around there.
for us.
No, for me.
At least the group said it.
Millennial healthy life.
So it's an
Yeah, 'cause I'm not about to like look at that one and actually shopping. Oh, well, throughout so you call it. Lists.
You'll get it.
The headbanger.
Well, that was there.
Tell me if you want to do drugs.
Honestly, this one has Google.
He was all smart.
Just about
Show
to
me
show.
that.
I think we need
Kogo eater inside.
Oh, you Kyle, what's up?
He was satisfied that.
What's up? Ready?
How are you? I'm good. I'm drowning in my studies. That's cool.
The Yaman Hamlet.
I'm just gonna get some notepad. That's awesome. Yeah.
Chuck Norris only needs a stunt double for the crime scene. They were gonna give him an Oscar for acting, but he's not acting.
Come on, you got this. You can
He once went golfing. Those golf balls are
Hey,
down on the stars.
dog, what's up?
nice one.
Chuck Norris can show you with the cord of his phone. How can Chuck Norris show me? With the cord of his phone. Nice. Hitler committed suicide the day he found out Chuck Norris was Jewish. Chuck Norris once took a trip to the Virgin Islands, they're now known as the islands.
I never know one.
Squeezes orange juice with banana. His blood type is AK-47. He won a staring contest with Medusa.
That's it.
He can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. He's the first person to slam a revolving door. When he goes camping, the bears hide their food. He is the most interesting man.
All those things are just smooth.
That The best that he's like not reading it off a list, he's like saying it.
Okay,
Chano.
now that we had a comedy break,
You're
continue.
getting the hang of how this works. It's just really doing this thing.
Took me 30 minutes to make my lunch.
Sometimes we want to go through a loop, but we don't know in advance how many times we want to go through. So that's an option, but we don't want, first of all, we don't want to go into the code every time and change it. Second of all, many times we do the code for people who don't know VBA and don't know how to code. And then that's not an option. So there's a way to do a loop that is not defined in advance how many times we'll go through the loop. But something that will occur during the looping will indicate that it's time to stop. Okay? For instance, we just went through a search program that goes through 5 names and looks if a name that a user gave appears there. Now, we have 5 names, but there could be any number of names there, and we want a code that will go through any number of names and will search them and tell us in which line that name appears. Okay? So that's one scenario. Or we had last week, we did a program that adds grades to the list. We saw how we can add a student and then how we can add his grades and calculate the average. Okay, but what if we don't know how many students we want to go through? Because every time it updates. So we want a program that will allow us to loop through all the names until we get to the end. That's one example. Okay? So the loop that we'll talk about now has the code. Do instead of for, and loop instead of next. So the loop starts with the command do and ends with the command loop. Now, there's a very big problem with this kind of loop, because as opposed to the for next, in which we define in advance how many times we go through the loop, and therefore we know the loop will end at some time. Over here, we must remember to define when the loop stops. And we also must make sure that this will happen sometime while we're looping. Because if we don't, we can get into an endless loop. Okay, and we'll just continue on the computer like a robot. You tell it to do something, it continues, does it forever, and then we'll have to just break out of the Excel and maybe lose all the programming that we did. So we don't want to get to that point. Okay? Now, how do we define when to stop? Okay, so there's the word until and the word while. Okay? We can define the stopping point by saying, do this until something happens. Or we can define the stopping point by saying, do this while something is still exists, so מתקיים.
So when that something stops existing, then
Then
the
stop.
loop also stops.
Right. Okay? So these things, two things are two sides of the coin. You can use either or in any event. So just use whichever is more convenient. Okay? Do until you get to the first empty cell, or do while the cell is still is not empty. The same thing. Okay? You get to the same point. The until and while you can put either over here, do until, do while, or we can put over here, loop until, loop while. Okay? So this is when to stop, either or, and we can put the stopping point, the condition of when to stop, either at the beginning, do until something happens, do while this still continues to exist, or we can put it at the end, loop until something happens, or loop while something still exists. What do you think would be the difference if we put it over here or over here? I think like a computer, coding, line by line. What would be the difference if we put the condition up here or we put the condition over here?
Shouldn't it make more sense to do until, and then when it gets to loop, it'd be while, because you're about to go back.
No, it's you can do either or. Yeah.
There's a code and that's how it'll stop looping. It goes down, it's gonna loop, and then it's gonna next line.
Right.
It's gonna run through the end of the sub. So before it's in the sub, it's gonna see until. Even though it's supposed to go back and loop it.
No. When you get the loop, you go back to do unless the condition happened. The difference is,
It's a loop on the line, it's gonna say loop until something right there.
never mind if it's here or here, that doesn't make a difference. When you get the loop, you go back to here, unless these happen. I think maybe you got the right answer, okay? Do, and then you put the condition, means you first check the condition. If the condition allows you, you go into the loop and you start doing it. If the condition over here already is not allowing you, you'll just skip the whole loop and go over here. Okay? That's when you put the condition up here. But if you put the condition down here, you first go and do the first time of the loop in any event. And only down here you check the condition and see if it allows you to go back or to continue. Okay, now let's see an example. So I have here these 5 names, and I don't know in advance how many times I want to go through this because no one told me that there's only 5. One time I run the program, there'll be 5. Another time I run the program, there'll be already 15. And the next time they could be 155. Okay? So I don't know in advance when I'm running the program how many, or when I'm writing the program, how many names would appear here when the program would be used. So if I go over here,
Can you switch the screen? We can't see it.
We can see the book.
you can't see the screen.
No.
Okay, so this over here, for I equals 1 to 5, won't work if we have 170 names, right? It will just check the first 5. So I need to change this loop in order to make sure that it works. So let's copy this. change this into do, and you see it's capitalized and turns into blue and loop. Okay, so now I go and do this, but over here, the way I put it, what would happen? Okay, you're not sure, then let's run this. I run it and I write. Yeah.
This
Debug. Okay, so says I, there is no I. Right? Because 4I equals 1 is erased. So I cannot use the I the way I used it before. Okay? So what is the first I want to have?
I have a tag.
Always get the right answer, mate, huh?
Good one.
He's very talented.
What does I represent here in the command cells?
Not really anything.
The first symbol.
It's in the rows, but it's not.
Row, right? Which row would I want to start in?
First one.
First one. So I want I to be equal to 1 at the beginning. So I say over here, I equals 1. And now, I has a meaning. Okay? But, as opposed to the 4 next, where I was forwarded by 1 each time I go through the 4 next, over here I will stay 1. There's nothing to move I up to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Right? Because there's no 4I equals 1, 2 something. Then I need to do this and advance I by 1 every time. So I put over here I equals what? What would you suggest? I want I to get to advance by 1 every time we go through the loop.
So I plus 1.
I equals I plus 1. Very good. Okay? Now, I will start with 1. We'll go into the loop. We'll start doing this. We'll check cells 1, 1. If it's the name, then message box, the name is in row I, and exits out. And if it's not the name, then we go and do this line, which is I equals 2. And we go back over here to do and check if the name is in 2. If yes, put out and exit. If no, go back and I equals 3 and 4 and 5 until when?
You haven't said it.
Until we find the name. And then we exit this up. Okay, so now if I run my program, I write over here, Leah. Okay, the name is in row 4, and but if I have over here if I have all of these names, before I would have checked only the first 5. Okay? Now I can run my program. Put over here F. And get row 9. And if I had 150 names, it would have continued until it found the name. Okay? And show me in which row the name appears. Questions?
Can you go back to the VBA? City code again?
So we have to define where we start. It's not defined in the loop because it's not for I equals 1. It's do. Okay? And we have to advance I by 1 with a special command, again, because it's not part of the loop. And it doesn't do it automatically.
Can you
Okay?
say I
But
is
all
equal
the
to-
rest was the same, stayed the same.
Why do we not have to use a until or while? Like we didn't specify till cell
Okay,
10.
very good. We didn't use the until a while because we have over here exit sub. Okay? The exit sub says, okay, if you find the name, stop. What does this mean?
That means that if you don't find them, it's just never gonna end.
If we don't find the name, it's not gonna end. It will just continue and continue and continue till it will get to where?
No,
This.
where I won't.
Okay, it won't stop until it gets, as a matter of fact, because I represents row, since it's the first parameter in cells. When we get to the last row in Excel, which is 1,000,000 and something, then it will stop because it will say there's no such row. Okay? But other than that, it wouldn't stop. Okay? On different occasions when we do something like this, and it doesn't depend on the cells, on the rows, for instance, that it won't stop ever until we break it. So, how do we tell it to stop?
Can we just do until what's called row 10?
Well, that's the same.
No, but you don't know where to stop if you have 170 names.
Ah, we don't know how many.
So you can do the
Lord.
with the second part of the if the name isn't there, else then it puts the message.
No, but then every time you get a message.
Then you'll
No,
never.
but only if the name isn't on the list.
Then you'll get a message every single
How do you know
time. You're
if
never
the
gonna
name's
finish
not
the
on the
program.
list? You're checking each
It
row.
would check each row.
Right, and each row, if it's not there, that's what we're doing. That won't work. So let me, yeah.
Maybe we incorporating the control down as well, just to the end of the.
Right, you could do that. That's the idea, okay? So we will assume that all of column A is filled in one after the other without an empty space
Oh, we could do that. Control down.
until the last one,
Yeah.
okay? So then, without the control arrow down, when do we want to stop? In the empty cell, right? In the
Empty cell,
first
right.
empty cell. So what we do over here is do until cells cells I1 equals quotation without anything inside. This means empty, nothing. Okay? Now, if I run this, and I write over here something that does not exist, okay, it will go through all of these, see that it doesn't exist, it will get to the first empty cell, and stop. And then the name is not on the list. Why did it do that? Because it went out of the loop, stopped the loop because this condition was met, and it goes and shows me the next line. So this is exactly the code that we wrote before, a search, but it's much more advanced in the meaning that it doesn't limit us to a specific number of rows to search in, but it goes from the beginning, from 1 till the first empty cell, first empty row. Yeah.
So the only problem I can think with that is that if you have a list of 200 names and by accident one of the rows has a blank cell, let's say 116 has a blank cell, that means it's going to show that the person on the list, even if they're between 117 and 200. So how do you fix that?
You,
Make sure that
you make sure that your list has no empty sets.
I mean, you just do blank cells. Can you add that to the macro? Like
You
do blank cells?
could, you could,
That's all.
but working with lists is a whole different story. There's ways to make sure that the list is intact. Okay, but that's different. Okay, so we assume in our case that there aren't any empty cells in our list in column A. Okay? Okay, so copy this program and redo the program so it would be more flexible to any number of rows or names on the list.
How does it, when this goes up?
And we should usually do something more like this, right? 'Cause this is more flexible.
Depends what are your instructions.
No, I'm taking it.
Run macro.
Right.
Name the macro. I guess it's just
What do we do?
What I just said.
Sorry, I wasn't concentrating.
Got him. Got him with his own. I'm good for a long time.
This program, keep going forward.
Yeah, but
So it says, so like have that
Can you tell me what is
You thought I would say nothing.
I wish you would have said nothing.
Okay.
What Excel?
But wrong time to ask me that. Sorry.
let's say that.
Listen, this is the second time I get this mistake, and this is about the fifth time I'm gonna talk about this mistake. If you write programs, macros, only in the modules, not in sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, because then things won't work properly.
Running in sheep.
There we go.
You fool.
You're not even sheep.
That's a rookie mistake, right?
I'm all
Was mandatory, was attendance mandatory for this morning's class?
I didn't take attendance in the
Oh, you're lucky,
Escalate.
2 points less in the final.
Just continue on with the come back around now. I'm gonna ask you again. Let's see if this
What?
What do you mean? When you nod your head, yes. But you want to say no, that's a roofie.
It's been a long day.
Yeah. Yeah. Name.
Listen, I know what's happening.
Use my name, name 1, or something else. Not name.
You got
Yeah, that's a movie, no?
That's the problem.
Oh, is that a song? I wish I knew more.
Yeah, you actually
Even if I need it, then I'll still miss
It doesn't know what you mean. Is it referring to a variable or is it referring
It doesn't recognize it, because it's just line defining it as a variable.
Yeah, but again, you're not register the word in the language as